Hello and welcome back for another Torah Tuesday. Torah Tuesday recently celebrated its third birthday, so thanks for coming along on the journey with us. It's been a wild ride. We have over 100 videos now. We did a full year of videos, then took a year off while we moved to Biola, and then now have another whole year. We've had a recent transition in producers, so we now have David Alexander, who stepped in as my TA to produce these videos, and we're so glad to have David on board. Welcome. Today we're continuing our exploration of the 12 signs and wonders in Exodus. We're beginning in chapter 11 with the death of the firstborn. So it's a good idea for us to kind of stop and take stock of how have we gotten here and where does this put us in the overall literary patterning of the signs and wonders. So you may remember that there's 3 cycles of signs, beginning with the water to blood and cycling on through to the sign of darkness that we dealt with last week. And today we are on the death of the firstborn, but I wanted to explain that in this cycle, if you were to imagine a chart, there will be a chart in the commentary when I publish it. If you imagine the chart as 3 sets of 3s, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, where the 9th sign is the sign of darkness and the 10th is the death of the firstborn. 9 and 10 go together in the same square on the chart. Together they share the features of both the column and the row on the chart, and by themselves neither one fully completes it. It's also literarily combined in that at the end of chapter 10, Pharaoh announces to Moses, "You will never see my face again. On the day you see my face again, you will die." And Moses says, "That's right, I'm never going to see you again." But it doesn't tell us that he actually leaves. So chapter 11, there's a chapter break here because it's a new sign starting. But it seems to be, from a narrative perspective, happening at the same time. The darkness has already been experienced, and now the warning is coming for the death of the firstborn, but it's in the same audience with Pharaoh. So Moses is not actually going to leave Pharaoh until verse 8 of chapter 11. And that's another reason why we're putting these 2 signs together, the darkness and the death. So the third cycle includes, just as a reminder, a command to stretch out your hand, a statement that this sign is unprecedented in some way, that it involves the whole land of Egypt, and that Pharaoh's heart was firm. And you'll see that in the plague of darkness, we have the stretching out of the hand, the whole land of Egypt, and the firm heart. So 3 of the 4 criteria are from the sign of darkness, but the sign of the death of the firstborn has the statement about this being unprecedented. Nothing like this has ever happened before and will not happen again. And it affects those throughout the land of Egypt. So there's some shared participation there in cycle number 3. And then in terms of the column on the chart, the third column, darkness came with no forewarning. It affected human and animal, and Pharaoh's heart was firm. So all of those related to darkness, but the other feature of the vertical column is that Pharaoh did not listen. And we're told with this sign, the sign of the death of the firstborn, that Pharaoh would not listen. So together they're filling out the rest of this chart of cycle of 3 signs. Now, you heard me at the beginning mention that there are 12 signs and wonders. If you haven't heard me talk about this before, you'll need to go back to probably chapter 6 or 7 when I introduced this concept. But in brief, we have the 10 traditional signs or plagues, plus the preamble, which is the staff that turns to a snake and swallows Pharaoh's snake. The crossing of the Sea of Reeds is the climax in which the sea swallows the Egyptian army. So we have the 2 swallowing signs as the number 11 and 12 to bring us to 12 signs and wonders. Okay, so let's dive into Exodus chapter 11, verse 1, reading from my own translation. Yahweh said to Moses, "Still one affliction I will bring against Pharaoh and against Egypt, after which he will send you away. Because of this, when he sends away, he will completely drive you out because of this." Now, before I read on, I just want to comment on this word affliction, this affliction that he will bring against Pharaoh. I'm intrigued by this word affliction, negah, in Hebrew, because it's in its verbal form, it can mean to strike or afflict. and affliction is the noun form of the same word. In Leviticus 13, verse 3, it describes a skin disease as a nega tsa'arat, so a skin affliction, or a skin disease affliction. It's kind of a compound idea. And the reason I bring this up is because in Exodus 4, verse 6, you might remember God gave Moses several signs to show that he was really calling Moses into this work of redemption. And these were things he could do for Pharaoh. And the first was staff turning into snake, and the second was his skin turned diseased. Remember, Moses put his hand inside his cloak, and when he took it out, it was diseased. The word for the disease on Moses' skin in chapter 4 was metzoraat. Tzaraat is the name of the skin disease in Leviticus that's called a nega. So it's an affliction of a skin disease. And Moses was afflicted with a skin disease in chapter 4, verse 6. Although it doesn't use the word afflict there, it does use the word for skin disease, which because they're later associated makes me think of them. So what I'm wondering is, because Moses never did this sign in front of Pharaoh, is it possible that Moses' sign of skin disease was a warning of the eventual death of the firstborn that God was saving for later? That might seem like a random association, like what does a rash have to do with dying? But it seems that there was an association in the Israelite way of thinking between skin diseases and death. The effect of a skin disease is that your skin begins decomposing or looking like a dead body does when it's decomposing. And so it's like you are a living dead, like you've begun to die though you are yet alive. And that seems to be the rationale behind separating those who have skin disease from the tabernacle worship, separating them out. They're not in a condition to come into the tabernacle because it looks like they're dying. So this is a foreign concept to us. The idea of ritual purity is a foreign concept to most of us, but it was very much alive for the Israelites. So I am wondering if Moses' sign prefigures the death of the firstborn in some small way, just like the swallowing of the snake in chapter 4 prefigured the swallowing of the army in chapter 14. There's two other reasons why I want to associate these, or why that I think are interesting. One is a looking forward. In chapter 12, verse 22, when the Israelites are instructed how to avoid the death of the firstborn, they're supposed to naga the blood of the lamb on their doorposts. They're supposed to touch it or afflict their doorposts with this blood. And so it's, again, possible that there's a connection here. God is going to afflict Egypt, so the people afflict their doorposts in order to avoid the affliction of Egypt. That's a looking forward. There's also a sense in which it looks backwards. In Genesis 12:17, God afflicts Pharaoh with diseases because he has taken Abraham's wife as his own. There's a scene involving an exchange of wealth. It appears to be human trafficking of some kind. Basically, Abraham sells his wife as Pharaoh's sex slave, and God's response was to afflict Pharaoh with diseases. So the affliction of Egypt is not a new thing. And we have this similar scene going on here where Egypt has enslaved the people of Israel, and God will afflict Pharaoh so that he will release them. So lots of possible resonances here. I might be making too much of this word nega. I'm curious in the comments below, let me know what you think of that reading to see if you think there's something going on here. I've already been talking for 10 minutes, so let's go ahead and call it a week. We only got through one verse, but that sets us up nicely for next week when we find out more about this affliction that God is bringing on Pharaoh and on all of Egypt. I hope you have a great week.